Here we go again. G'day Saners. Give you a few seconds to tune in and then we can get started. Make sure to comment your thoughts. We'll go through the team. Let me know how you've been all week and your thoughts about going into tomorrow night's game against West Coast. G'day Meg. For one, it's actually been quite a quick week for me. I thought this week was going to drag. The loss after Melbourne, that whole week dragged massively for me. But this week's gone fast. Just focused on work, focused on just outside stuff, and not thought about the game too much, apart from now and obviously the podcast. But I'm feeling a bit better about it now. I have a weird feeling about tomorrow, so I don't know how you guys feel, but I don't know. West Coast in Melbourne, they're not always crash hot. They played here a couple of weeks ago against the Dogs, and the Dogs got the better of them. And I just genuinely think that we have no choice but to deliver something tomorrow night. I thought that the week after Melbourne, I thought, well, we have no choice but to beat Essendon, and we didn't. We didn't come close. But I'm thinking now, we genuinely have no other option but to compete really hard against West Coast and try and get as close to a win as we can. That's the only way we can get out of this rut. The only way. And it starts in the ruck. And that's where we'll start the teams. I've got them in front of me. This is a huge one for us. And we thought, losing Ryder and Marshall would, it hurt, but it wouldn't hurt that much. But it has. And by that, we don't know how important they are until they come back and we see the difference that someone like Rowan Marshall makes. And that's where we'll start. Rowan Marshall's back in the team. He makes his way in after 3 weeks out with a hot spot in his foot. And the thing with Rowe is he's not just a great ruckman. He can go forward. He goes back and takes intercept marks. He's a great field kick. He's versatile. And he plays like another midfielder. And that's somewhere in the middle that we've struggled. He just gets the ball and belts it forward, and we haven't had someone like that that's just been so direct in the middle of the ground. And we've been struggling there to begin with, with no rucks. We've had to play Carlisle there. We've played McKernan there. And obviously Paul Hunter's had to go there. There were rumours that maybe Josh Battle might pinch hit tomorrow because Carlisle's going to have his hands full in the back line with the West Coast Talls. So he may not get much of a shout there. But judging by what Ratton said in the press conference, apparently Rowan Marshall's very keen to just ruck 100% of the time against Natanui. And, Natanui's been in good form, but funnily enough, his best game came a couple of weeks ago when they lost. So, this is a good time for Rowan Marshall to come back, and then it gives Paddy Ryder another 4 or 5 days to recover, and he might be fit for the Richmond game, and that just changes the dynamic of the team. Now, I'm assuming that our effort's going to be there. I'm assuming that we're just going to get the Saints from last year. And that's a big assumption because we haven't had the Saints from last year at all yet. And, they were very far from it last week. We all know that. But it proves how quickly things can change in football. 1 week we're celebrating. The next week we a bit disappointed about the Melbourne loss, but we genuinely thought we'd beat Essendon pretty comfortably. That doesn't happen, but it gives us another chance this week to bounce back. And I love the ins. I think all of them they make us a stronger team. You look at Rowan Marshall in the ruck and forward, potentially back as well. Jack Bytel comes in and he was a bit hard done by being dropped a few weeks ago after a really good performance in round 1. He brings that physicality, but he's got a bit of explosiveness in his game. He loves getting the ball, taking the player on and running. And for a big boy like that, that's serious talent to have. And then obviously Jimmy Webster, who's a good ball user. He's tough as nails. And we're going to need him back there with someone like Liam Ryan, who's one of the best small forwards in the competition over the last couple of years. So it's great timing for Jimmy Webster to come back in. We'll go through the outs. Ben Long omitted. He was the medical sub last week anyway, and he played part of the game after Jade Gresham was injured. Obviously, Gresham's out for the season, which is terrible news. Mason Wood omitted after about 7 or 8 disposals last week and little impact on the game. And Sean McKernan has had a couple of weeks I think he's played almost every game this season, but his stay is now finished with Rowan Marshall coming in and no McKernan in the ruck. So it's good to have a dedicated ruck. Our backline looks good. Carlisle's there, Dougal Howard's there, Cal Wilkie, Caulfield. I'm wondering, I think Hunter Clark might play a bit more halfback like last year, and that's mainly because of Bytel coming in and taking that midfield position, which is fine by me because we need to be physical in the middle of the ground. That's where it starts. West Coast have brought in Jake Waterman, but they've lost Langdon, who was the sub, I think, last week, and Luke Shuey. So that's a big one for them because he's one of those runners. He's like the Merritts and McGraths from last week. He gets the ball, but he doesn't stop running. And that's the sort of play that we struggle to contain. You know, I'm backing us to, now that we can put our focus solely on someone like Gaff, I'd love for Seb Ross to do an unselfish sort of setup and just tag the hell out of him. And then Kelly is the one that we need to worry about as well. Those two are the main ones. Dom Sheed's pretty good, but I think Gaff, who just has leather poisoning every time we play them, and obviously Kelly, who just won the game off his own boot last season. Let's be quite frank. He was the man of the match. He's the one that set them up. They had injuries all over the place, but he had the best game he's had in years, and he got them over the line. And we can't forget, you know, we had a poorer team last year playing them. They did too, obviously. But we were, I think, a goal up midway through the last quarter, and we just fell to pieces in the last 10 minutes. So we've got form against West Coast. They're not that good under the roof, and we've got nowhere to hide. You know, it would have been easy to drop players this week, and a lot of people have commented and said, you know, Jack, why didn't we just drop everyone? You know, no one deserves to play this week. Yeah, fair enough. But who the hell are you bringing in? You're not bringing in, no offense, but you're not bringing in a Dean Kent at the expense of a Dan Butler. You're not bringing in a Dunstan at the expense of a Brad Hill. That's not happening. You need good players to come in, and we've got depth, but you can't afford to go in against West Coast when you're 1-2 already and your back's against the wall and not have, on paper, your best team. And we know that we've got it in us to perform. We did it most of last year. We know that these players have form. We know that they can do it on their day. They just haven't had their day yet. So I think it'd be harsh to drop 6 or 7 players, expect to win, and expect those players to come back and be happy and to be ready to go. I like what Rats has done. You know, I think that he's gone to the team and he said, the easy thing for me, blokes, would be to drop you. You have the week off, and we give the responsibility to another player that hasn't played yet. That would be too easy. I'm giving it to you the hard way. I'm keeping you in the team because you're going to have to face that crowd that you pissed off last week at the same ground against very good opposition, and you're going to have to return the favour and perform. And if you don't, then there's some serious discussions that need to be made next week. And with a 5-day turnaround, because we play Thursday night against Richmond, that makes sense. You can actually drop players then because you can either deem it as a rest or a drop. But this week, I like that he's put the pressure on all of them and said, you all were shithouse last week. You're staying in because I know that you can do it. And if you don't, you're in trouble. And I love that. That puts pressure on them, and that means they've got nowhere to hide. They have to deliver. And I've never seen a team drop 6 or 7 players like everyone's been asking and actually perform. You know, everyone thinks that because Ross Lyon dropped Stephen Milne and Nick Del Santo in 2008 or whatever it was, and they came back and we ended up being a good team, that it works for every team. It doesn't. It doesn't work for every team. And there's no Sandy this weekend. You know, there's no Sandy this week, I believe. So you drop them, they don't get a run. So that means that they're really a risk to bring back in for the Richmond game when they've not had a practice game anyway. So if there was Sandringham, it makes sense to drop some players. But given there's no Sandy, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but then they're not going to get a run. And you bring them in off what? Off a rest and no form guide and you know, no chance to redeem themselves in the VFL. So I think we've got a very good team on paper. It's very balanced. It's the strongest one we've fielded all season, and we're going to need them all to perform. So I'm feeling optimistic about this game. I'm not saying we're going to win, but I have a feeling we're going to give it everything, and we have to. So I don't want to come back this time tomorrow, and say, fuck, what the hell's going on? Where's the heart? Where's the care? They've talked all week. The social media has been really all about focus and performance and not so much about laughing and everyone having fun like it has been in previous weeks. So hopefully that translates all the way through to the field tomorrow. But that's what I'm thinking, guys. You can disagree with me, that's fine. But I think we've got a good team on balance. Billings and Hill on the wings. We've got Sinclair at halfback with Hunter Clark and Jimmy Webster. Tim Membry, Higgins, Butler, King, Battle. Rowan Marshall can rest forward at times if Carlisle can go into the ruck. And then Caulfield, Loney, Bartel, McKenzie on the bench. So I'm pretty excited to see this team play. West Coast have got a disciplined team. We know what they're going to do. They've got a very dangerous forward line. Liam Ryan, Kennedy, Darling, Oscar Allen, James Cripps, we know too well about him. But the rest of the team, the backline's good. Shepherd, Barras, Hearn, Cole, McGovern, Nelson, but they can be got at. And then midfield, Duggan, Sheed, Redden, Natanui, Kelly and Gaff can also be got at. Rowan Marshall can make Natanui accountable. And then we tag either Kelly or Gaff, and that leaves one of them to do the damage. And if not, we run off them and do the damage the other way. So I think that we've got a good enough team on paper to win the game tomorrow night. Whether they put in enough effort and they execute that gives us the chance to do that remains to be seen. But this gives us the best chance to win the game tomorrow. So I'm happy with the changes, and I'm happy we didn't go with dropping everyone just for the sake of it to make everyone feel happy. All right, let's go through some of these comments, and then we'll get on to enjoying, I think, Port Adelaide Richmond tonight. So that's a big game for those two teams, both coming off a loss as well. Come on, Saints, let's get it together. That's from Gloria. Daniel says we did. I don't think so. Thomas says we really have to show some spirit tomorrow night. We definitely do, mate. What else we got? Joe says, well, don't stress. This doesn't define who we are as people. It's entertainment, like watching a movie. Some are good, some are bad. So what? Let's hope this week it's going to be a great one. I like that analogy. Peter says, it's been a tough week. If we make it a contest, I'll be happy. I know, I think that's the thing. Last week there was genuinely no effort, so you're just happy to see that. But knowing me, if it's close to midway through the fourth term or a chance to win or we're ahead, we're all going to be going off. And I want to feel that atmosphere tomorrow at Marvel. Last week, obviously, it was dead. There was no reason to cheer. The week before, after a couple of mistakes in the game, the fans got on everyone's back and it just made the team nervous, I felt, being at the ground. So tomorrow, if Brad Hill goes for a risky kick and it doesn't come off, I don't want everyone to moan and boo and tell him to piss off and get on the bench and that sort of stuff. We should be cheering them, getting behind them, and giving them confidence to just keep taking risks, keep taking the game on, because at the end of the day, when Saints are winning, we're taking the game on and we're playing fast footy. So hopefully the crowd can help generate that sort of energy tomorrow at the ground. This one's from Ryan Abbott. Hopefully not the Ryan Abbott that we got rid of a few last year. McKernan being dropped, best thing to happen. James says, anyone seen Dan Butler last in at the Gabba in 2010? Got the haircut though. We called that in the podcast. We said Dan Butler, sinks, get the haircut, focus on your footy. We don't want to hear about your hair anymore. We want to hear about you kicking goals. So I'm glad that, Dan Butler's clearly listened to the podcast and cut the hair. Rowe Marshall is our barometer. That's from Razor. That's a good point. If Rowe is on and having a good game, we are generally in the game or in front. So that's a great call. He just gives us so much versatility around the ground, and he's class too. He's clean with the footy. He doesn't juggle it. He picks it up off the deck and he gets the hands away or the kick away. So I can't wait to see Rowe back out there. I hope Saints make a statement. That's from James. Sean says, saw Nick Natanui and Josh Kennedy today walking down Chapel Street. Wish I tripped them over to help us. They're both very good players, so we're going to have to be on our game to stop them, that's for sure. Gail says it would be good if the Saints turn up this week. Go Saints. Just give 100% go Saints. That's from Barbara. I shudder to think what Flying Ryan will do to D-Mac. I don't think he'll play on him. I think the first play to go to someone like Liam Ryan is going to be Jimmy Webster. I'd love McKenzie to play off a wing. He's got a massive tank. And from last week, he actually was one of our better ball users. I know everyone was generally shit across the board, but he actually used the ball pretty well and set up a really good passage of play where he took a player on and found a short 20-metre dart inboard into the 50, and that's something I think that was probably the only mark inside 50 we took all of last week, and that was generated off the back of Dan McKenzie taking the game on, but also lowering the ice. He didn't bomb it like we've basically been accustomed to doing in the last few weeks. Joe says, nothing but a win will be accepted. Enough talk, start performing, please. I agree with you there, Joe. There's been a lot of talk all season. It's time to actually put it into practice and get the job done. I don't mind seeing us lose as long as we show up. That's from Blake. Marcus says, hey Jake, why is McKenzie still in? I agree with the rest of the changes. Probably need Paddy back too, just to have a run for form. Mate, I genuinely think that McKenzie hasn't been our poorer player for the season. Round 1, he actually was very good. Didn't play round 2, and he came back in round 3, and he was not in our worst 5 or 6 players on the ground, that's for sure. So when you're on history, he's been quite poor, but based on recent form, I don't see who you bring into when you drop someone like McKenzie. You know, maybe Dunstan, but then I think we're too slow in the middle, and we've got Dunstan, Vital, Seb Ross, Jack Steele, Brad Crouch as well. So I think we're probably too heavy in the middle there if you bring in someone like Dunstan, whereas McKenzie can play back, can play off a wing, but he also helps release someone like a Hunter Clark. McKenzie goes to half-back where Clark would go, and then you can push someone like Hunter Clark back into the midfield. So I think that's a good move, because Dunstan doesn't offer that versatility. He can't go off a half-back flank and on a wing. He's basically a bull in the middle, and that's about it. So I think McKenzie staying in is fine. It's not a major problem on my end. Corey says, I would have personally brought in Dean Kent for Loney. Yeah, Dean Kent's been an emergency the last few weeks. Would not have been surprised to see him get a go this week, but if we're relying on Dean Kent's and the Dunstans to beat a team like West Coast, I feel like we're not really going forward. No offense to them, but I think the team we've fielded is a team that can beat West Coast. And Loney, as much as he's inconsistent, he can bob up and really... he's also a barometer for us as well. If he's kicking a couple of early goals, or he's kicking more than 2 goals a game, we generally win as well. So I'm happy to see the responsibility put back on him to perform. Who goes to Liam Ryan? It's from Bevan. I think I said it before. I think Jimmy Webster's the first player that goes to someone like Liam Ryan. And hopefully he gets the job done for us. Good to see Ron Marshall back in. That's from Luke. James says, Jake Carlisle to get on the nose... Ridiculous comment. I'm not going to read that out. I basically read it then anyway, but I think it's great to have Carlisle back in the back line. He can take someone like a Darling, Dougal Howard can go on a Kennedy or vice versa, and then you've got someone like Wilkie who can try and play tall on an Oscar Allen, and then Webster covers someone like Liam Ryan, and then maybe McKenzie on someone like a Cripps. So I think that we've got the matchups there in the back line. It just depends on what team shows up. You know, on paper we're great, but on paper we're great every week. So they need to bloody put their, just I can't even finish the damn sentence. Just put their heads down and get to work is what I mean. So if they do that, then we can all be proud, win, loss or draw, but it gives us the best chance to win. Hey Jake, do you like the changes? That's from Craig. I do. There wasn't really one there that I thought, oh shit, that should have happened, or wow, I'm surprised that happened. It was pretty much what I expected. I wrote the changes down on a piece of paper as to what I thought would happen. That was basically the changes I thought would happen. I thought maybe Paul Hunter could get a go and come in just to give Ron Marshall that chop out, so Hunter can go back into the ruck, Carlisle can stay dedicated at centre half back, and then Rowan Marshall can rest forward while Hunter goes in the ruck. But now, we've got Rowan Marshall basically dedicated ruck, and then after that, I don't know who offers the chop out. I think maybe Battle could do it, maybe King. I don't want Carlisle doing it because I feel like when Carlisle goes into the ruck, that's when Kennedy or a Darling can get on top because there's no height there to intercept. So I think that Marshall's probably going to be rucking a lot of the game tomorrow night. Stu says forward needs to be running in circles all day this weekend. No bombing like we did against Melbourne. West Coast backline will love it, especially McGovern. And look out for those holes at the top of West Coast forward 50. Someone needs to stand there. It's a great point. I I've got their stats in front of me here actually, so this brings me to that. They're number 1 for marks per game, so that means they know how to kick, they know how to retain possession. They're number 2 for kicks per game. They're number 3 for hitouts, they're number 5 for score, and then they've got really good defensive stats. And they don't handball a lot, but they're also 17th for tackles, so they don't put a lot of pressure on the opposition. So hopefully if we can hold possession and not bomb it, which is going to be a bit of a tweak to our usual game plan, that gives us a good chance to win the game. You know, conversely, we look at us, we're ranked 5th for clearances, which is great considering we've had no rucks. We're ranked number 1 for clangers. We make the most mistakes out of any team in the competition. Maybe because we just take too many risks. Maybe we need to slow it down and just lead up to the footy and not go for those Hail Marys down the middle of the ground like we've been trying to do. Because if you're number 1 for clangers, that also means you're number 1 for giving the footy back to the opposition very quickly, which means that your defence doesn't have time to set and they just go down the other end and kick easy goals like Essendon did and like Melbourne did for the most part a couple of weeks ago. So if we mitigate that, we reduce clangers, then I dare say that we'll be in the game for a bit longer than what we were in the last couple of weeks. Let's get back to some of these comments. I agree, this is from Radley. I agree, booing our own players is bloody stupid. Home ground advantage doesn't mean shit if you demoralise your own team. Exactly right. We need to cheer them. We need to clap, yell ball and yell at the umps and yell at West Coast, but don't yell at your players. Christine said they said we were cooked, but we are just on the boil, so watch our Eagles. Great comment there. I think that's true. I think, like, Wayne Carey reckons our season's done and, you know, put the cue in the rack and give up. But that's a load of shit. You know, we're 1 win and 2 losses. Richmond are 2-1. Brisbane are 1-2. Geelong are 2-1. We're only 1 win outside the top 6, I think. So it's very earlier in the year. And the new fixtures after the next 3 are Gold Coast and Hawthorn. 2 winnable games. If we can pinch 1 or 2 of the next 3, that would be unbelievable. You get Paddy Ryder back and you just go from there. And after that, there's no ceiling on what the season holds for us. So we just want the Saints from last season to play tomorrow night. That's what we want. And momentum's a crazy thing. You start playing good footy and it's contagious across the board. It's the same as if 1 player or 2 players miss a few kicks, contagious, the whole team starts, you know, shitting themselves and playing poor footy. So I think that if we see 5 or 6 of them play some pretty good footy early tomorrow, the rest are going to lift and follow them. So we don't want Jack Steele getting 30 and the next best player getting 15 like it was last week. We can't have 1 or 2 players doing everything and hope that we're going to be a chance against a good team like West Coast. This one's from Radley again. Brad Hill used to play for Freo. He should be in for a big game against his old rivals. What else we got? Justin said, going to tell the viewers about that supposed wedding weekend we were chatting about. Oh, nah, no need to do that. This is from Stu. Forwards need to be running in circles all day this weekend. No bombing like we did against Melbourne. Read that comment already. Good to see Marshall back and Vitale get another run. I feel Highmore in for Mackenzie, but it is what it is. Highmore's a good one, but maybe then we're too tall. I think we're going back to sort of the structure. If you look at the back 6 from last year versus tomorrow, it's very similar to that. So apart from maybe Ben Long and Ben Patton being out, we've got Webster coming back in, but the majority of them pretty much what we did last year, and I think that that's a big thing, finding that chemistry again. You don't want to make too many changes because you lose chemistry, morale can decrease because players get upset that they think that other players have been hard done by and vice versa. So I think maintaining chemistry is really strong, but also giving the players that didn't play well last week a chance to bounce back and find form for the rest of the year this week. I think that's really important as well. So I'm backing Rats and I'm backing the boys to bounce back big time. Colin says, are we always too optimistic before the match and set our expectations too high? I don't know. I think that for Saints fans, having any sort of expectation that's remotely high seems too high based on history, based on we always get the rough end of the stick, don't we? We always get heartbroken in the end. That's the history of the footy club. any other football club, and I think the expectation is fair. If we were Richmond and we were in this sort of form, the expectation would be the same, and no one would bat an eyelid. You know, they got done by nearly 50 points to Sydney last week, and Sydney almost lost to Essendon, who flogged us. So that's how crazy the year is. You don't know which team is really the form team right now, because the form is fluctuating, and that's what happens in the first 6 to 7 rounds of every season. Last year, Richmond had 1 win from their first 5. 1 win. They won the damn flag. We flogged them last year. A lot of teams did early on. They drew. They were struggling to kick goals. Question marks over Dusty and Cochin. And then you see what they do for the rest of the year. It's a long year. That was in a 16-game season, by the way. We've got 23 or 22 games this year to cement ourselves as a top 8 team. And once you're in the top 8, you make finals, anything can happen. So for experts like Wayne Carey to come out and say our season's done is ridiculous. So I don't read into that at all. And you guys shouldn't either. Marcus says, I reckon we will lose, but not by much. It's our curse against them. We'll be happy with effort under 2 and a 2-goal loss. Mitchell says, a loss is acceptable if our effort and pressure returns. Look, we say that, but if we lose and the effort returns, I feel like some of us are still going to be a bit upset, and I, for one, will be. We can't afford to go 1-3 with Richmond and Port. This is one of the most winnable games out of the next 3. I think this game and the Richmond game are the 2 winnable out of the 3. Port away is always tough. But the funny thing is, West Coast, we should have beaten them last year. Richmond, we did beat them last year in the home and away. And then Port, we beat them on their home deck, which is where we play them in 3 weeks' time. So in the next 3, on paper, they're scary proposition. All 3 of them are very good teams, obviously. But they're 3 teams that we should have beaten all 3 of them last year. We beat 2 of them, but we should have beaten all 3 of them. So if we perform and we bring the effort, we shouldn't really have anything to fear. We should take the game on, obviously not recklessly, so much so that it leaves us exposed like it has in the last 2 weeks, but take the game on and ask questions. I don't want us to rock up and worry too much about the opposition. We need to go there and play whatever our game plan is. Last week, we thought our game plan was working in the last year, but obviously it's been found out with the man on the mark rule and fast footy and possession footy. So hopefully on the track this week, we've tweaked a few things and we see more lead-ups. You know, Max King needs to lead up, Battle needs to lead up and find more of the ball. We need to get the smalls into the game. If the smalls are in the game tomorrow, we're in the game. They have not been around since the GWS game in round 1. So this is their chance to find form under the roof, get to the feet of the talls and make yourself serviceable. I don't want to see our smalls at the bottom of the possession count with 1 tackle between 3 of them and a goal between 3 of them. I want to see them kicking goals and pressuring the tall West Coast defence. I believe in DMAC, that's from Darren. What else we got here? 1 game at a time, that's from Hay. Wendy says, as being in the hub last year, the difference, it definitely suited St Kilda. That's a great point, Wendy. I mentioned that in the podcast during the week, and I mentioned that in the way that, the team got a chance to bond because you're in a hub, you're around everyone, you're around family and friends and your teammates constantly. You're only around them, so you create a really strong friendship with everyone. Now we're back in Melbourne, everyone's in their own homes, probably not spending as much time with their teammates. It can affect the chemistry of the team. You know, I don't want to read into it too much, but I think you have to factor this into account. So maybe it's no coincidence that the 1 game we've won so far this year is the game that we travelled and spent time with each other in Sydney. You know, we travelled on the Saturday, I think, stayed the night, and then played the Sunday and won the game, and then flew back that night. So it had that hub feel to it. So maybe there is a correlation. Maybe we needed a couple of weeks back in Melbourne to get used to that routine again. And you can't forget, we had a whole year off playing in front of our home fans at Marvel, which is exciting, but also I would be very nervous if I was a Brad Hill and I've come off a bad game 1 week and I'm playing, under the roof in front of our supporters that booed the week before when you made a mistake. That makes you nervous. So hopefully we get rid of the nerves, we focus on the footy, pretend the crowd isn't there almost, and just focus on playing our game and let just ditch all the outside factors. Because I think that last year with no crowds at the footy or minimal crowds until late in the year, and then being a hub, kind of reduce that pressure that fans bring when you're playing in front of a big crowd. So yeah, it's a good comment. How far do we reckon Paddy Ryder is away? I think Ratton in his press conference said around 2 to 3 weeks. So it would be nice to get him for Richmond in round 5, but I think it's more likely after Port Adelaide. Or maybe the Port game. Maybe he comes back in against his old side where he played so well last year. Maybe that could be a good return for Paddy Ryder. Yeah, fair point, Christopher. You can't make that excuse like that for Hill, though, Jay. He has to perform. I agree, man. I'm not saying that it's okay that he hasn't performed because he's nervous. I'm just saying that they are human, and if I was them, I would be nervous too, and that would affect my performance, for sure. I mean, I've played local footy, and obviously they're not playing in front of big crowds, but when you're playing in a final on local level, there is actually a bigger crowd there. You'd say, instead of 50 people watching, you get 200, but you actually feel that added pressure because when you make a mistake, and I've had it, there's 20 blokes on the sidelines yelling shit at you. So it puts you off a little bit, and I get that with indoor soccer as well. So I can't imagine how it is for footballers to cop 20,000 supporters doing that. I'm just trying to be realistic here, but it's no excuse. They need to perform tomorrow night. So on that note, I think I'll leave it there, guys. I think I appreciate all the comments. I could talk all day about this game and all, the week leading up and what we need to do to beat West Coast, but at the end of the damn day, we need to just rock up, tackle the shit out of West Coast, put pressure on them non-stop, and play Saints footy. Play with heart. We want to leave the ground tomorrow night with a win or a loss, but no matter what, we want to leave the ground proud and looking forward to the next week. We don't want to leave thinking, shit, this season's done, what's going on? Because last week was the worst I've ever felt at the football. So many people were leaving the ground, and I was basically clapping them saying, good on you, you don't deserve to be here watching this. But tomorrow we're going to rock up anyway because that's what we do. We love our Saints, and we want to rock up and support them in the good times and in the bad times. But hopefully tomorrow we're leaving the ground feeling a lot better than what we did last week. So on that note, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate all your comments. Thank you so much for watching. A quick little plug. There is some new merch that has just dropped. Rowan Marshall, the Prospect t-shirts and long sleeve in black and white. The Saints TV store. So if you love Rowan Marshall and you love Saints TV, go on there and purchase that. They've just launched today. So have a look out for those. And you'll catch me tomorrow night, guys, for as always, the match review after the game. Hopefully I'm not ranting. Hopefully we're celebrating and talking about a good win and just in general a really good performance from our boys tomorrow night. So until then, guys, have a great Friday night. Enjoy your night, and I'll see you tomorrow at the footy. Thanks, guys, and go Saints.